There's a specific kind of loneliness that high achievers rarely talk about. Not the kind that comes from being alone, the kind that comes from being surrounded and still feeling completely disconnected. Disconnected from yourself, from the room you're standing in, from the role you're still performing, and from the version of your life that used to make complete sense. And here's what makes it so hard to name. Nothing is technically wrong. The business still runs, the title still impresses, and the calendar is still full. And yet, something inside of you has gone quiet in a way that function alone cannot fix. That's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to your Passion, Purpose, and Personal Brand. I'm Lisa McGuire, Strategic Identity Advisor, and this episode is one I've been sitting with for a while because it touches something real. Something I've lived and something I keep hearing underneath conversations with founders and leaders who look from the outside like they have everything all figured out. But before we dive in, a quick word about Successfully Stuck, the First Truth Kit. Because if what I'm describing today is already landing for you, the kit was built exactly for this moment. It helps you identify whether what you're feeling is burnout, stuckness, misalignment, or the beginning of a real identity shift. Inside is a private self-diagnostic, reflection prompts, the identity evolution journey map, and a guided audio from me. Not to rush you anywhere, just to help you finally tell yourself the truth. The link for the information is down in the show notes. So here's something I've noticed about entrepreneurship and leadership. Everybody performs certainty really well. You walk into a room of founders and every single one of them sound confident, put together, and clear on where they're going. Meanwhile, a significant number of them are quietly exhausted, emotionally unfed, and wondering if they are the only one who feels that way. The loneliness of leadership is real. When you're the one carrying the vision, always expected to know, to stay steady, to keep moving, people learn what you do longer before than they ever know who you are. And that gap is its own kind of isolation. But there's a loneliness that goes even deeper. And I think it's what a lot of people are actually feeling right now. It's the loneliness of outgrowing a version of yourself before you have any idea who you're becoming. In 2021, I went through a significant internal shift. And what I realized, quietly, not dramatically, was the person who had gotten me to that point was the person I needed to say goodbye to. I'd spent years living through someone else's filter, someone else's playbook, and someone else's definition of what my life and success was supposed to look like. And I'd gotten very good at achieving, without ever stopping to ask what success actually meant to me. That realization changes something in you, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the question becomes, if I'm no longer living by the old script, who am I becoming? I started asking myself different questions. Who is the future version of me calling me forward? What does she tolerate? What does she no longer apologize for? How does she walk into a room? And what kind of life is she building? And slowly, I realized she wasn't asking me to become someone else. She was asking me to stop abandoning myself. Now, I want to be completely transparent here because people online tend to make this sound very beautiful and clean and glamorous. It is not. There is a real grief in this process. The old version of you is not the enemy. She protected you. She helped you belong, to achieve, to survive. You don't shame her. You thank her. You tell her you did a good job, but I have to go on from here. And then you do the actual work of integrating that, which takes time, rest, and a willingness to sit with patterns that have lived inside of you for so long they started to feel like your personality. For a while, you're walking between two identities. That's what I call the identity eclipse, when the world who still knows you for one thing while another version of you is quietly emerging underneath. You're not fully connected to the old identity, but not yet anchored in the new one. That in-between season is genuinely lonely. People around you still relate to who you were. They introduce you by the old story. They expect the old behaviors. And you realize, without drama or bitterness, that you no longer fully belong where you once fit. I think a lot of people experience this in rooms first. You sit somewhere you've been part of for years, a networking group, a professional community, a friendship circle, or even a leadership role. And something has quietly shifted. Your interests changed. Your values changed. What you need from a conversation changed. And everyone around you is still relating to the version of you that they've always known. That's a particular kind of loneliness because growth sometimes changes relational resonance. Some people are exactly right for one season of your life and genuinely too small for the next version of you that's emerging. That doesn't make them bad people. It just means your assignment changed. I experienced this directly not long ago. When I started my business, I was told I needed to network. Now, as an introvert, I had no idea what that actually meant. But eventually, I made a simple rule for myself. If I attended an event and had one meaningful follow-up conversation, I'd consider it a win. So for 6 years, I did that circuit. Events, coffee meetings, small talk, introductions. I built some relationships. But if I'm honest, there was a lot of activity and not a lot of depth. Over time, my philosophy shifted. I stopped wanting transactional networking and started getting deeply interested in referral ecosystems, trusted relationships, real partnerships, people already working with the clients I was built to serve. That's actually where my community group Beyond the Transaction came from. So recently, I went back to one of those original networking groups from my early business years. About 100 people were in the room, and I felt almost immediately one of the deepest waves of loneliness I'd experienced in years. Not because anything was wrong with the people there, but because I had evolved, and being back made that undeniably clear. The small talk, the performative energy, the transactional rhythm, I felt it in my body, and I knew this is no longer my room. The strange thing is I needed to go back to finally know that for certain. I think a lot of people are living quiet versions of this right now. Not in networking groups necessarily, but maybe in marriages or careers, leadership roles, communities, identities, loneliness that enters slowly. No explosion, no collapse, just a widening gap between who you are and what still nourishes you. There's a line I came across recently that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. What felt like enough at 32 starts to feel like an absence at 47. Not because life got worse, because you became more honest. That's it, exactly. Your nervous system eventually stops accepting substitutes. Your body knows before your mind has language for it. It knows when your life is functioning but not feeding you. It knows when success became performance. It knows when belonging started requiring self-abandonment. And I believe that's why so many people are struggling right now. We're living in a world of more noise, more visibility, more performance. And quietly, in the middle of all of it, people are losing their connection to themselves. The answer to that loneliness is not more performance. It's identity. Not conceptually knowing who you are, actually knowing. And I want to tell you how I got there, because it didn't come from a framework. It came from a moment of uncomfortable honesty. For a long time, I worked in the world of personal branding, and I watched something that bothered me more and more the longer I sat with it. People were struggling to talk about the value they brought. But more than that, they couldn't see it in themselves. They were describing their expertise, their credentials, their service offerings. And none of that was wrong, but it was also nowhere near the whole picture. Because what made them remarkable wasn't just what they knew. It was how they treated people. It was the impact they had on others without even trying. It was something harder to name, something that lived at the intersection of their experiences and their essence and the specific way they moved through the world. Something no one else would ever have exactly in the same configuration. And then I had to look at my own work honestly, because here's what I realized. Personal branding, the way it was being taught, wasn't really about authenticity. It was about performance. It was about putting on a mask, a carefully constructed version of yourself designed to earn what you need from the room. Recognition, inclusion, business, maybe respect. The mask wasn't always dishonest. Sometimes it was built from real gifts, but the gifts were arranged in the wrong order, serving the wrong purpose. And that's where category of only came from, not as a branding concept, as recognition that every person carries this unicorn thumbprint, a combination of lived experience, natural essence, and a way of being that no one else on earth will ever replicate. And once you can actually see it, once you have language for it, everything shifts. How you talk about what you do, who you attract, what becomes possible. It works whether you're the face of a personal brand or running a business so outside the box there's no existing context for what you do. The clarity is the same. The foundation is the same. You stop competing. You stop shape-shifting. You stop needing every room to validate you. Because when you genuinely know who you are, imposter syndrome starts losing its grip. Visibility becomes less frightening. Your work begins organizing around contribution instead of approval. You start understanding, this is what I see. This is what I'm here to contribute. This is the room I actually belong in. And that kind of clarity changes loneliness because you stop searching for belonging in places that require you to disappear. If this is resonating, if you're navigating these kind of shifts in business, leadership, identity, or visibility, I want to extend a quiet invitation. Beyond the transaction is my peer advisory and business accelerator community for B2B service providers who are trying to navigate this landscape without losing themselves in the process. Not networking performance, real relationships, real conversation, and real growth. If you'd like to come as my guest for a one-time visit, the application link is in the show notes. And maybe this is the truth underneath everything I've said today. The loneliness you're feeling may not be evidence that something is wrong with you. It may be evidence that something inside of you is no longer willing to live disconnected from yourself. Maybe the room expired or the role expired. Maybe the identity expired. And the ache you've been carrying isn't asking you to panic. It's asking you to tell yourself the truth. Because the people who navigate this next era most powerfully won't be the ones who perform certainty the best. They'll be the ones who know themselves deeply enough to stay connected to them and to stay connected to who they are, even while everything around them keeps changing. That kind of steadiness changes everything. Before I let you go, I want to plant a seed for next week. Everything we talked about today, the loneliness, the rooms that expire, the identity that's ending, and the one that's emerging, it all points to the same question underneath. Who are you actually? Not the version you perform, not the mask you built to earn inclusion or respect or business. It's the thing that's already true about you that you've probably been underselling your entire career. Next week, we're going to talk about why that question is no longer just personal development. It's a business strategy conversation. Because as AI makes execution more replicable, the one thing that cannot be replicated is you. Your perspective, your pattern recognition, your way of seeing the impact you have on people without even trying. That's your unicorn thumbprint. And once you can clearly see it, everything changes. How you talk about what you do, who you attract, and what becomes possible. For your next chapter, that will be the next episode, and I'll see you there.